Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So today we are going to be, or this evening, we're going to be speaking to Simon Mantelli, who started out in a very dodgy area of Cape Town and has built up to a phenomenal success and risk advertising. But he also writes for BD Live, and he also changed quite a few things on SAA, we believe. We shall be probing him later. So, can we please get a massive stand-up round of applause for Simon Mantelli from Mantelli's Biscuits. Thank you. Take a seat. Got some water here.
I've got everything.
Just switch this around. There we go. Very important. Please get onto Twitter with the password iXperience guest, and the password is iXCapeTown. The hashtag, as you can see on the top here, is Mantelli. That's an I. Mantelli Grimes. Okay. Get on there. The person with the best tweet gets to win some cool prizes. And then also, that's it, team? And there's a business card competition. So if you guys have put your business cards in the bowl, we'll be joining that, but we can do that later. That's fine. Okay. Cool. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Now, you started out in Startup Grind. We try and start it from the beginning, the entire process of the entrepreneur's life, and how that entrepreneur has gone from, well, 0 to hero. Now, you started out as a salesman selling mirrors in Mitchell's Plain. Now, as a white South African in Mitchell's Plain in the
1976, at the time of the riots, the Soweto riots.
That was quite a brave move. Tell us a bit about that story.
Well, I think what happened was, one of the big influences in my life was my father, who'd always sort of said to me, you need to be in business on your own. It's vital that you paddle your own canoe. In any business, and this is a lesson that applies to everyone, any business revolves around sales. So it doesn't matter how good your idea is, if you cannot sell it or market it, it's like winking at a girl in the dark, and you've got to be able to tell her,
Sure.
in one way or another. And so what happened was, one of the first jobs I had was to go and sell mirrors, and the job was selling mirrors in Mitchell's Plain. I was the only white kid, and Mitchell's Plain, you alluded that it was a rough area. It wasn't a rough area at all. When I sold there were 2 suburbs. I had my sales pitch worked out, and the old adage of a door-to-door salesman having to put your foot in the door, and you're having to break the door down. You have to put your pride in your pocket, and that's something that I don't know where all of you are within your sort of various businesses. But you're going to get a lot of no's in life. You're going to get a lot of doors slammed in your face, and that toughens you and hardens you up. So I had a sales pitch where I'd knock on the door, and I'm going to speak in a bit of the vernacular, and I'd say, "Good evening, you Mrs. No, I'm Mrs. September." And I'd say, "Mrs. September, I'm Simon Mantell. I'm from Mirrorman. Mirrorman cuts out the middleman." And with that, I'd drop down, have my walk in with these mirrors, and I had my sales pitch worked out. And even at that age, I'd worked out that while the man might cuck and batal, the woman makes the buying decisions in the home. So I had to get her on my side. I had to, and the coup de grace was also, when you're selling, never give people a direct question as in, do you like it or don't you like it? Because if you ask them, do you like my pitch? You've got to guide them in a way where you've given them a choice, and they've got to choose one of what you're offering them, and you don't want to offer them too many things either. So I would show them these mirrors, and the Caroline, the Classic, the Catherine, and something. I mean, they were discussed. Everything about them was kitsch. And I'd say, Mrs. September, which mirror do you like? And she'd ponder, and eventually she'd choose one, and then I'd go up to the wall and I'd say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the prettiest of us all? So say the mirror, Mrs. September. And then it would be, how many mirrors shall I put you down for? Not do you want a mirror, how many do you want? You know, and anyway, that's how I learned the trade. But that was, you know, it was very, and I used to work from 6 in the evening until 9, you know, 2-3 nights a week, and it was a very good lesson. I did quite well, and I think that's where I kind of almost cut my teeth. Yeah.
Excellent. And okay, so you cut your teeth, you got the acumen of selling. What did you decide to do next? What led you on to the next step of your life?
Well, I think I'd always done things. I mean, I remember being at school, and there were kids who came from affluent homes, and they were very spoilt, and they'd get these fancy racing bikes, and they'd get a bike, and within a year it would be broken, and I'd buy them from them. I'd fix them up. In those days, there was no Gumtree and all that. It was Argus Classifieds, and I'd fix them up, and I'd watch what the guys did in the second-hand car adverts. It'd be like, in those days, the 2 racing bikes you had were an Armstrong and a Peugeot, and it was Armstrong 10-speed, 1 careful owner, condition must be seen to be believed, and I'd smoke stuff, and that's really how I began.
Sure. So and then how did this lead to cookies?
Well, what I did was, and I do have a financial background. I qualified as a chartered accountant, but having a financial background is probably, it's an obstacle or a formal training. I'm not a big believer or big proponent in a business education. I mean, I think it's smoke and mirror stuff. You've got to do the practical stuff. And what happened was I'd always wanted to have Italian takeaway shops. That was like my dream, but probably eggs and bacon is my limit in terms of culinary capabilities. So I couldn't find an Italian chef to run these, to start an Italian takeaway business. And then the only thing, I was busy doing my articles at Price Waterhouse. The only thing that I could do was wash cars, because as a kid, I didn't go anywhere until the cars were washed and polished and the tires polished. So believe it or not, as a CA, I started in the basement of the new Wooltree head office. It was a new building in those days, in 1986. And I started with one guy whose name appropriately was Gift. And Gift and I washed cars. And I was probably the most highly qualified car washer. And to this day, I've probably washed more cars than most people. And that's how I began. And started with that. Work day, I mean, it was really crap conditions, with gumboots and feet that are wet, in wash bays. And there were a couple of things that I learned. I had empathy for blue collar workers. I knew what doing blue collar work, my hands, I looked like a mechanic. And from that, I met an Italian guy who then worked for me, and we started these 2 Italian shops. And an English woman worked in one of the pasta shops, and she was a good baker, but much like a gran would bake at home. And we started with an oven the size of a microwave, and that's how it began. Sold the pasta shops, and started, we had a D5 oven, we were in the big league, and then we had a second D5 oven and a third, and obviously then eventually became a proper factory. But I think the lesson of that, and this is what I see so often with people wanting to start out, is that they think it's an easy ride, and it's not an easy ride, and it takes time. It's a brick by brick process. And I mean, what I do know is, and I remember distinctly that, the friends of mine that had qualified with me at Price Waterhouse, who had been in the same sort of vintage at university, they were working at breweries as financial managers and going on overseas holidays and driving fancy cars. And I remember for me to go to the Spur to have a burger was a big decision, probably for 7 or 8 years. So it was a long, and then, suddenly what happens is, like anything in life, you battle, you get a little bit of luck. Well, there's a combination of things happen together, and then from that, you get a bit of a spurt, then you get to the next plateau, and then it's, how do you then get to the next level? But it's a long road. I mean, let no one, maybe in IT there might be someone with a brilliant idea, but by and large, it's a long road. I mean, don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
And then you started off doing pasta, and then was pasta like cookies the next thing for pasta, or was there a whole journey through?
No, I think what happened was we were ahead of our time. My big thing was to do handmade lasagnas and cannellonis, and all the fancy people in town would come and bring their dishes, and we'd fill them with all the pastas, and it would look as though they'd cooked themselves, and they'd have these fancy dinner parties. And so but it was ahead of its time, and it was too premium. You know, what one has to realize in South Africa is that there are a handful of people that have disposable income in relative terms, or maybe even appreciate quality. You know, you have to look at like where is the spending power. That's the one thing. And then what makes it, you know, if you look in Europe, typically most countries in Europe, and I'm going to mention Denmark because my wife's Danish, the population's homogenous. They're all on a sort of a similar band. You know, here we've got it's a multicultural society, and on top of it, the distances are great. So, I mean, a city like Copenhagen with 1.5 million people probably has more spending power than the whole of South Africa, just because people are buying the same kind of things, and they're tuned into the same, you know, their tastes, etc. Everything, you know, whether it's in food or clothing, whatever, they want similar kind of things. Whereas here we've got, you know, very disparate needs and wants. Yeah.
One thing I did forget, I do apologize, is Simon has allowed or offered to give advice to you entrepreneurs. So when it comes to the question answer section, he said that please ask him questions about your business. And the way we use the question answer system is by using the slide at the back here. So I don't know if you can see on the top there, it says www.sli.do/startcpt. You don't need an app or download anything. Just go straight to that web address on your phone or internet browser. Open it up. You don't have to log in or sign in. Just go straight to that address and ask a question. So I'm having this problem. How can I solve it? Whatever. And Simon has agreed to answer those questions.
I mean, I think it's a lot more important. I mean, you know, you don't want to come and hear my stuff. You know, you want to try and maybe solve some of the problems that you guys are facing. You know.
And if you see other questions on there, you can vote them up and down. Okay. Has everybody got the hashtag? Mantelli Grounds. Okay, cool. So you did the cookie thing, and now I believe you got into the SAA selling your cookies on the airlines.
No, I think you know, just to give you a bit of an idea, and this is also all of you, depending on where you are in the various businesses that you've got, is that what's interesting is that where you start in life is not where you're going to finish up. And I'm a firm proponent in the idea that a path leads to a road and a road leads to a highway. So the idea that you had, I mean, when I first began, I thought, well, God, I'm going to have this whole chain of pasta shops, and it'll be like, we'll put my feet back and take it easy on the beach. Then I realized, hang on, there wasn't a gap there. Then the next gap that I kind of saw was we did fresh baked product, but then I realized that, hang on now, you know, you've got to deliver every day, and that became a hassle. And you know, when I reflect back, I remember for 3 years the only day I didn't work was Christmas Day, because we were open. So that was how hard one worked. And when I got into when it was a bakery, then there was a day shift and a night shift, and you know, there weren't taxis in those days for staff, so I used to then take the staff home, deliver them, you know, across the Cape Flats, and get home at the night shift wasn't a full night shift, we finished at midnight, but by the time I'd be home it was 2 o'clock. But what happened was one thing led onto another, and then I realized go into product with long life, because it means that I can now send it all over the country. Whereas, you know, if you've got, like, take a restaurant as an example, your catchment area is maybe 5 kilometers around you. Whereas if you now got a product with long life, you can move it all over the country and maybe outside the borders. And really that's what happened. And then once again, things changed. So all the people who got here early, they got the Lani shortbread. All the people at the back got the cheapskate stuff. But if I look at the shortbread that we do over there, maybe, Patrick, maybe just want to show a box to the people at the back. So what happened was, to give you an idea how things changed. So I figured 20 years ago, no one made pure butter shortbread. You had Eat Some More, which was like a cheap mass-produced product with hardly any butter and butter flavoring. And I figured, well, here was the gap to do something differently. And so we did this, obviously, and I thought, and once again, this is how you think about it. Well, I'll make the product, well, the hard part's to get listed. Well, that's the easy part. So making it's easy, the packaging is easy, getting it listed with the supermarkets is easy. The difficult part is getting it sold off the supermarket shelves and fighting with the other suppliers who control that space. So really what happened was a product, I mean in today's terms now, that probably retails at Pick and Pay, I don't know, for 30, 31 Rand. But it leaves our factory at 13 Rand or 13 Rand 50. Now that's the lesson of retail. So anything that you buy at Woolworths leaves the factory gate, it's half the price that Woolworths sells it at. So what now happens is, in fact, that product is actually outpriced for the market. In much the same way, and I was giving you this example, is if you take Lindt, Lindt is a very affordable chocolate in Europe. It's no big deal. It's like Cadbury's. Lindt is like a fancy chocolate here, and it is a very good chocolate. But how many people, for all the advertising that Lindt does, when you're in a supermarket, how often do you see someone taking a slab of Lindt off the shelf as opposed to Cadbury's Top Deck or whatever? The pricing ends up killing it. So what we then did was we tried that we had this sort of foray into the retail space, but we weren't moving the volume. So we then had to go into what's called food service, where we made individual biscuits, individually wrapped, which we could then take on a business-to-business basis to clients. So to be airlines, hotels, hospitals, and that's how we changed direction again. And I would never have thought, when I came up with that, I would never have thought that the way to do it would be in food service. Because what I then realized, and these are all the things that I've learned over the years, is that if you're in a smaller business, you need to pick your battles. So, and it's probably a little bit like guerrilla warfare in a sense. We were now in a situation where I could go to British Airways or KLM or Qantas or Virgin and cut a deal where the big guys, they weren't geared for that, and their overhead structure made it impossible for them to compete. So what I could now do was offer a premium product at the cost of a far inferior, cheaper product offered by the big guys. And that's how we then built up our brand name, was through all these sort of almost what you call secondary markets, which people overlook. And often what is obvious doesn't dawn on one, because you want to be kind of where the ego is in the supermarkets, and in fact, it's like pushing water uphill with a rake. It's a waste of time. So you've got to pick your battles.
So if I was selling stuff, would you recommend me going into the retail space at all?
If you were in food,
yeah,
I would say it's pissing against the southeaster. I mean, you're wasting your time. And this is something in any business, and it doesn't matter what size business it is. Making the product or the service, whatever, that's the easy part. It's the route to market. It's how do you unlock that route to market. That's the key. And I mean, I saw there was a question at the top there while I was sitting at the background. Funding, how do you unlock, how do you find that? That's the key. And people don't give that enough thought.
Okay, so the selling directly or selling through these different channels, you've come up with the Mantelli's Direct, which is a director of selling, actually creating your own channel.
Well, that's something quite new, this Mantelli's Direct, yeah. So what we did, and it's quite interesting how also things, what happens, we 10, 12 years ago identified that I wanted to have a factory in a nice area as opposed to like a Montague Gardens or an Epping. And we bought ground in Westlake Business Park, and we built one factory, sold it. We then bought ground, built another factory. And what was quite interesting, people came and they knocked on the door looking for product. And I've never been a factory shop person. I couldn't think of anything worse than going to Access Park and scratching through stuff that's like the wrong size and rejects. And so, but it opened my eyes to something. And often, one has preconceptions of what's, you don't understand. You need to understand what the customer wants. Don't enforce what you think the customer wants. Listen to what they want. And we then bought another building. I bought a building around the corner, and we put in a little factory shop. But not selling rejects, selling first, but at the killer price, the ex-works price. And this little business has done, I mean, the shop is 20 square meters, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it probably does about 3 million rand a year. Out of 20 square meters, selling boxes of biscuits at 15 rand. It's out of the way. It's closed on weekends. It's closed for Christmas. It closes at 2 on a Friday. It closes at 4:30 during the week. I mean, it's the most unfriendly shopping hours. You really got to be desperate. So, but that was, so it opened my eyes to something. And then, so what we've now done is we've started I've always been a brick by brick person and kind of test something. So we've opened our first shop, which is a franchise store in Belvedere Square in Claremont, where we're doing exactly the same. It's positioned near a Woolworths. And I think it's the young girl who owns it is going to do really well.
I actually stopped past there the other day.
Yeah.
Are you thinking of maybe franchising that into a franchising model, or are you just
I
first
think it
testing
will.
it?
No, I want to, like everything. I think one wants to prove the first one and make sure that it can work. I think the franchising thing, to a large degree, is a big ripple. You know, it's a smoke and mirrors thing as well. In that, you know, the people, you know, and typically the franchise thing is in the restaurant space. They pay a fortune as a sign-up fee. They pay a fortune in shop fitting, and the franchise company is getting a cut from the shop fitters. And then what happens is, and you know, if you look at someone like Famous Brands and where they make their money, is they then supply all the burgers and the buns and the sauces and all of those things, which is fair enough. But then they're still making a cut on turnover, so they're making money upstream and they're making money downstream, and the poor little guy or woman in the middle, he or she is like a hamster on a treadmill, 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, making money for the shopping centre, making money for Famous. If you look at Famous Brands results, fantastic. Ask the average Wimpy or Mug and Bean or whatever it is, ask them how they're doing, and they're taking strain. And that's why if you look now, you actually have companies that own 20 or 30 or 40 of those restaurants, because then they've got scale to pay managers a bad salary so that they can get a return on it. So it's quite interesting. So I want to have a slightly different system where, you know what, we sell our product, that's where we make our money. It's not no franchise signing up fee.
Okay.
It's affordable to set up. We do the advertising, we provide the sampling, the product for sampling, but we control the advertising for them.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
And do the advertising.
Yeah. Random question is, what is your most unusual skill?
Causing shit. That's probably, yeah, I would say probably being a bit controversial.
Okay, actually,
I don't know whether it's a skill. But
I like it, 'cause it brings me now to the next question of your advert. I'm going to play the sound clip for you guys, so that those who haven't heard it, at least they can hear it tonight. So,
might have to play it a couple of times.
Pilot of Air Force Base, Jet Airways Bridal Express, request landing.
Sorry, Bridal Express, can you drop some names?
Blade, Gwendy,
Not good enough.
Jeff, Julius, Rob, Tokyo.
No, try harder.
Oh, that is the end of the alphabet. Zoo,
Mantellis, Captain?
What did I hear, number one?
I sneaked them on board. Would you like one?
Did I hear Mantellis the biscuits with impeccable taste?
that's affirmative.
Fucking clean for landing and report to the tower now with the Mantellis.
okay, South Africa will get that one quite well, but what is your... that is quite risky advertising. That aired on the radio. And on what radio stations did you put it on to?
Well, that's on 702 in Cape Talk.
Cape Talk,
Yeah.
okay. And why did you choose those ones, or just...
No, I
to
think
your
it's,
connections?
well, I'd never listened to Cape Talk until they came and said, we've got this advertising package. And I tell you what, you know, it opened my, because I was always a bit sort of cynical about radio advertising. I tell you what, it's been phenomenal for us, phenomenal. And it's not, radio advertising is affordable. And if you do the right kind of ads, I mean, it creates brand awareness. If that's what you're looking for, it's been the best thing that I could have done. And you know, obviously, Cape Talk first came to me, and I figured, look, let's put it once again. You know, buy a tick in the lucky dip and test it out, and it worked really well. And you know, since then we've been advertising on Cape Talk and 702 for the last couple of years.
Okay. And okay, on that risky note, do you get a positive feedback, or have you ever had threatening letters?
Who cares? You know. No, look, you know, we get people. I mean, we've had a couple of ads where I've taken the piss out of the DA. You know, the DA do anything party. You know, so we've had a couple of ads because they're not squeaky clean either.
Yeah.
And I've had kind of DA, you know, these kind of I will never buy your biscuits again. You are this and that. The DA are fantastic, and how you can, so you do have that. But I think really it's about creating a talking point. I don't know whether all those ads necessarily generate sales, but bearing in mind that when we run these sort of radio adverts, it's actually to create awareness in a business-to-business space. So when the women who work for me who are in commercial or food sales, and they're speaking to someone at a big hotel chain, like we're from Mantell, yeah, we heard the ads and we heard, Bruce Whitfield was interviewing you on radio on the Money Show or whatever it is. There's a brand awareness there that opens the door and makes life a little bit easier.
On the coming back to the SAA thing, apparently there was a tender that you guys tendered for, and then it turned into a non-tender. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think that's probably and this is something that I think applies to all of you. You're going to come across obstacles, and I think the measure of it is how you deal with those obstacles. So just in a nutshell, what happened was, I don't know, I've maybe flown on SAA for the last 30 years. I can remember whenever you got cheese on the aeroplane, you got this little 3-pack of crackers. So do any of you remember? You get a thing called a Wheatsworth. It's made national brands. It's a 4 billion rand business owned by AVI. And what happened was, I was actually going overseas last year, and I had the Sunday Times, and I was just about it before we took off, and I looked at the tender section, and there was a tender section for SAA and the SAA for dry snacks. And when I got to the other side, I looked on the SAA website, and including the dry snacks, it was a long list of, like a laundry list of products, chocolates, peanuts, all the things that they do in dry snacks, biltong. There was hidden amongst all of these was the Wheatsworth 3-in-1 cracker. And we were thinking of putting a savoury cracker line into the factory. And I downloaded the tender, which was an 80-page document. It took a bloody week and a half to fill in clearance of this, tax clearances. I mean, it's not a tender. That sort of tender is not for the faint-hearted. Yeah. And then the tender had to be in, I think, by the end of April last year. And I had business in Johannesburg, so I figured, look, to really cover all bases, I'm a Luddite when it comes to technological stuff, but I even took a selfie putting the tender in the tender box and to show that it was done on time. And I received notification from SAA confirming receipt of the tender, notification from Air Chefs, which is the catering company owned by SAA. Now they use 365,000 packs of crackers a month. So it's a nice contract, but more importantly, it's 365,000 units a month in itself is not such a big deal, but it's the brand awareness, because that suddenly creates something different. So we had to cross all the hurdles of the tender document. Are you BEE? And we BEE level 2. Are you halal? Are you this? Are you that? HACCP certified. We ticked all those boxes. They then requested samples, and then in December last year, so a full 8 months later, they asked for final samples for final evaluation by the Bid Adjudication Council of SAA. We're still in the game. February this year, I got a signed letter from the acting CEO of Air Chef saying, "Dear Mr. Mantell, congratulations, Mantelli has been awarded the tender." Fantastic. I then got hold of their head of strategic sourcing and procurement, who then said, no, it's not a tender. You're a preferred supplier. So I said, well, what does that mean? No, well, it wasn't really a tender, and Wheatsworth will keep the business, and that's how it's going to be. So obviously that then started the ball rolling, and what's quite interesting with this one, it also just, you then have to deal with things differently. So fortunately, I know the guys at 702 and 567, and maybe some of you listened to Bruce Whitfield's show. So he interviewed me, and that sort of marked pup dick in a way. That was the one element. I write for Business Day, so they then did a couple of stories on, I don't know what it was, but it was like biscuit makers tender crumbles, you know what I mean? It was a nice ring to it. And, one thing led to another. So this is where we are then. But then, interesting enough, what I did is I went to the public protector. So that, rather than go the conventional legal route, I mean, because they've just had a case in the Constitutional Court where it's beyond, argument that it's a tender and they've got to award it. The fact that they've given me the letter, but so then what I did is I got hold of the CEO of Air Chefs, and no, he didn't read what he signed, and then it was he he can't remember whether Wheatsworth submitted a tender. So, I mean, it was just more lies and more lies and more lies. So this is where we are. So they've called for an external forensic audit, which was done, and the result should be out soon. But, you know, whatever happens, the fight is on. And I think that, you know, you need to accept that whatever you're going to do, whether you're fighting with debtors who owe you money, whether you're fighting with customers who commit and then, you know, let you down, or whether it's suppliers, unfortunately, the nature of business, because it's not always ethical, you got to be in for the arm wrestle. You know, it's just how, I'd rather not have it that way, but that's how it is.
You got an R&D department
Yeah.
in your store. How important for entrepreneurs is R&D, especially when starting out?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, I think you've got to walk before you can run. And, you know, I've always believed, and, you know, someone early on this evening said, you know, we've got to get funding, we've got to get this. I actually think you've got to start, whatever it is, you've got to do it. You've got to take the baby steps. And, you know, when you begin, if you're going to be successful in whatever business you run, you've got to be a jack of all trades. You might not be a complete master of everything, but if you cannot do everything yourself, you're never going to be able to hold the blowtorch to someone else to say you're not performing. And, you know, so you need to understand admin, you need to understand if it's a product or a service, you need to be able to do everything in the beginning. And that's why if you prepare to do everything in the beginning, you don't need a whole lot of capital. You know, you can actually start humbly, prove the concept, and once you've proved it, you can then start. So, you know, I think that those things kind of evolve. There's a natural progression, but it's almost like a golfer saying, well, give me the driver. That's what someone learning, I want the driver, when in fact you must maybe start with a 9-iron.
Yeah.
And, you know, first tap the ball around the, you know, do a couple of pitches and putts and just focus on the short stuff first. And then, you know.
Based on that, starting out, would you do a PTY limited when you start at your company, or would you just start as a sole proprietor? And then
well, ironically, yeah, I mean, I'm still a sole proprietor. You know, there are no benefits as a typically, if you're starting your own business, you are on the hook for everything. You're signing surety for this, you're signing surety for that.
So if you're PTY, the protection it gives you is not as
you know,
much.
maybe as the business gets bigger, I mean, let's say, what are my risks? You know, I'm not going to run a business irresponsibly or fraudulently, but the risk might be, for example, that a customer chokes in a Biscuits, or there's a problem, but then, you know, that's why you have insurance for that. So you have public liability cover and you have product liability cover. So we've got probably 30 million rands worth of product liability cover, and the same for public liability cover. And in theory, something drastic happened, you know, they could come after me, but, you know, we've got all the right insurance for the staff and workman's compensation and accident fund. And I don't think, you know, I think that, you know, if you haven't got partners, I don't think that there's any harm in being a sole proprietor. It's never stopped us. It's never prevented us doing any business. Yeah, we registered for everything. The only thing is we're not a PTY. Okay. And I don't think it's a big deal. It simplifies your life. You don't have to have an audit. You know, having qualified as an auditor, I know it's all a lot of bullshit. You know, if you've got your fingers on the pulse and you're paying all this money to have a fancy audit, whereas, you know, if you're prepared to watch the figures, you know, and invariably when an audit happens, well, the horse is already bolted if there's fraud in your business. So you've learnt about it after the event.
Okay, question time. Jeremy says here, what books do you regularly gift to friends, family? That is the top voted question.
God, I don't know whether I actually...
there we go. There we go. Top voted question.
No, with the books.
We'll go on. Okay, go the books.
Yeah, I mean, I don't generally buy books. I mean, I'm a big reader of books, but as presents, I wouldn't buy books. You know,
but as a business day writer, you would do a lot of reading.
Now, I read a lot, but it's all historical or biographical.
Okay.
You know, I don't read that many business books, but I'm interested in history. Okay.
Well, here's one. Has the banting or the Tim Noakes diet had an impact on your business? If so, are you planning on bringing out any banting friendly treats? That is the you know, your low carb, no flour type diets.
let me choke on all that fat. I'll have a heart attack. Yeah. Look, I think, all of those things, I mean, my view on it is I think it's probably a little bit of a fad.
Sure.
I mean, that smoke and mirror stuff, and it's the new thing. It's like, I remember a couple of years ago, or 20 years ago, everyone, it was Herbalife and it was this and it, all of those things. Let a couple of people start having heart attacks and other problems from eating all that fat. I think, like everything, you need a balance in life. I'm not saying that we don't react to what the market wants, but I've seen it. People are diabetic. We've got sugar-free biscuits and diabetes. 5% of the population is meant to be diabetic. All the diabetic people that come to our factory shop, what do? They buy the stuff with sugar in it. Like I look at it, I say, well, you should be buying the sugar-free stuff, which is actually very nice. So it's like, you've got the gluten intolerance, you've got all these things. You've got to actually go where the majority is. Otherwise you're a real fringe player. And to get the volumes, I'm not saying that I'll dismiss it, but it's not top of our, it's not top of our list.
Okay. Oh, here we go. When starting up a new business, is it best to test the market and start as a sole proprietor, or should the legalities be? Okay, I think we've actually covered that question already.
Yeah.
So that's fine. We'll go to the next one, which is, how do I gain access to seed funding for a high-tech venture? Government organizations move so slowly and your voice isn't heard. Should we look internationally? How do we efficiently pique interest?
Well, I think the first thing that I would say to that is, whose question is that, by the way?
Savant.
Whereabouts?
From Greenpoint. I don't know where he is.
Okay. I would say the first thing is, it's a bit like fishing. Where you throw your line will determine what kind of fish you're going to catch. So, like that one, there was a glass hoppy, and you don't want to throw your line in a rock pool. If you want to catch a tuna, you've got to go 20 k's off Cape Point. So I think the first thing is, if you've got a really good idea, you've then got to, I wouldn't waste my time with the government. I think that's also, rather go the private enterprise route, but then you need to position yourself to target the right kind of individuals, the right kind of companies who can help you. To go the international route, it's a bit like someone having a business saying, well, we want to export, when they can't even do their business at home. I'm saying, if you've explored all funding routes or funding opportunities within South Africa, which are readily accessible in terms of you can get face to face with someone, and you still have no joy, then look elsewhere. But to me, it's also a measure of, if you're not capable of getting funding locally, means that you either have to improve your sales pitch, or maybe the product just hasn't got legs. Because any idea, you need to get other people excited about it. It's no good you being excited about something and you can't convince anyone, and that's also one of the tests. I think a lot of the time people want to be entrepreneurs or they want to be in business, but they don't realize how hard the selling aspect is, and you've got to get that right. So I would look
if you don't have the right product, it's not going to help you either.
Yeah, well, you can have the right product, but you sell it badly. So you need to have the right product, and you need to then pitch it to the right market. So it's no good me trying to sell a product in a Muslim area that isn't halal. So let's say if Athlon's a particularly Muslim suburb, well, if I want to sell biscuits in Athlone, I must be halal. So I would look locally first. Yeah.
Speaking of locally and globally, you're selling biscuits to Russia. How did you wangle that sort of amazing achievement?
Well, that sounds more fancy than it really is. It's not really such a big deal. What happens is we've got a company that represents us on our exports, and they exhibited all the international food shows. So our product would then go and be exhibited in Paris at Ciel, which is a massive food show, and a food show called Anuga in Germany. So maybe one of the chains, I think in fact it was a Finnish chain that has branches in St. Petersburg and Moscow. They bought our products.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you just managed to get through. But you also sell in other countries, right?
Yeah, also it's small stuff, relative, it's, and this is one of the things about the exports thing, is that you need to, if you're in a local market, you can control the marketing, you can control the brand awareness, you can control all those things. But if you're not trying to do something 10,000 k's away, unless you're like a Nestle, where you launch a product, you've got the the marketing budget, and you've already got all the other products within the store. One product feeds off another. This is like a bit of a, it's a hit and miss affair. So I think for a small business or a medium-sized business, I think exporting is overrated unless you're doing private label where that retailer is, marketing it under their own brand. And a lot of food manufacturers in this country have done very well, but with private label, but not with their own branding.
How do you create and nurture your company culture at Mantell? Actually, we never touched on staff, but so you can talk a bit about also staff issues and your company culture at Mantell.
Yeah, we only employ women and no men. And so what's actually quite nice, you slipped up on something here. You spoke about entrepreneurs. This is the thing. It's always his. It was nice to see so many women here this evening, and I hadn't expected that, which is great to see. So we only employ women.
Okay.
And we've got a nice blend of age, more mature women, youth, and sometimes getting women to work together in one environment can be
tricky.
Can be tricky, but overall, I think that women are far more particular, they're far more pedantic, and if a woman is following a procedure, a guy will, you'll show him how something needs to be done, and as soon as you turn your back, he's doing a MacGyver, and he's like taking a shortcut, whereas women are very process driven, and it's and that works well for us if we're going to be consistent. So it's all women across the board.
And then having those different age groups, does that help with the culture and help maintain the balance?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's there's the exuberance and innocence of youth. So we have people, if it's on the marketing side or the technical side, who are a bit younger. They haven't been scarred by miserable bosses yet. And it works quite well.
It works quite well. Okay. Right. Let's see another question here. So there's another one. If you have 100,000 to invest in a new business, what area would you go into?
I'd go into an area that I know, because I think that what happens is too many people go into things that they don't know. So, and in much the same way, people who are employed want to be in business on their own, and what they end up doing is they're employed in whatever area it is, and they end up going into something completely different. And the whole idea to me is that you want to, if you're going to change your direction, once again, you change direction gradually, but if you move from what you know, you've got all those contacts, because it's the contacts that make something happen. And you need to go slowly, and slowly you find the new path. But if you're sort of doing things that are diametrically opposed to one another, you're going to be on a hiding to nothing. And I think too many people, and I see too much of that, where you'll see someone, they'll get a pension payout if they're older and they now want to do something. I mean, they've got no experience at all. So go and learn at someone else's expense and then slowly move. So, I mean, it would apply to any business. So invest in something that you know.
Yeah. And you've got the experience of it, so you'll do better at
Yeah.
it. Okay, what would you say is it's better to be in a partnership or to go solo?
I think for me, you got to be on your own as the first thing. And I see so many, particularly people going out for the first time, they figure, well, they'll have a partner. So if you go over the waterfalls together, you've got to hold someone's hand, and you both get squashed at the bottom. There's that kind of moral, or the sort of moral support. But first, do it on your own. If you ever need to take someone on, they can maybe work for you. You can see how they work.
Test them out a bit.
And maybe they might buy and let them earn their keep. But I think it's very, very dangerous to start off with a partner. I mean, if you just think of a relationship, how tricky that is. I mean, imagine kind of chatting to someone and saying, well, let's just move in together. I mean, it's a more gradual process than that. And I just think that too many people, that's why they lose their boots. They lose their boots because they get into partnership too soon.
Yeah. So it's fine in the long run, and you've tested the person out, and
also
you see that actually this is the right partner for you.
But I also think that when business is good and business is profitable, well, then partnerships are great. It's when it's a rocky road. That's when maybe the one partner figures they're doing all the work and the other one's there for the ride, and I think you've got to be able to do it on your own. But I might be wrong, but that would be my advice always. First, establish a business on your own terms, and then
move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. why can't I buy your biscuits from the website? Are you thinking of going e-commerce route?
No, I mean, as I say, I'm a bit of a Luddite and old-fashioned of that. It's not the kind of product, I think that the rand value is too small for all the hassle involved. Potentially it could get broken. I was chatting to a friend of mine who has a perfume, he imports perfumes. Now that would be a perfect business to take direct, cut out, all the fancy shops and all the rents and all that. That's the sort of product, but I don't think the product that we've got lends itself to that.
Okay.
Just because of the rand spend per purchase is too small.
Too small, sure. What about selling it at a higher price online? So the people actually pay for the convenience of getting their biscuits delivered to their home.
Yeah, I still think that...
make it more of a couch potato.
No, I think it may be what one could do. You could have a situation where in a big corporate, so let's say take Sanlam or Old Mutual, and I think in Old Mutual there are probably 8,000 people. What you could do is you could say, right, to all of you who want biscuits, order biscuits online and the biscuits get delivered to Old Mutual. It's one drop. There you could do it, but to kind of someone orders 100 rands worth of biscuits, I mean, we're not in the space where I want to be worrying about that sort of stuff.
And all this stuff.
For that, those kind of purchases.
And partnering with other delivery systems like a courier company, and then they just handle that. So by the time it leaves, they must sort out the rest.
But I think even still, let's say the minimum delivery charge is 40 rand. So someone buys 50 rands worth of biscuits, now they're spending 90, then they may as well come to Mantelli's, they come to a shop, or they might go somewhere else. I just don't think you have to have a value proposition that makes sense. It's no good just being online and convenience. You've got to be convenient still cheaper. I think that you've got to do both.
Yeah, like it. Last question. Did you have any mentors that helped you along your way?
Yeah, look, I think that probably my father was quite a good sounding board. Like, tell them to get fucked. Tell them to get fucked.
As fathers do.
Yeah. So I think from that perspective, but I think that, you learn as you go along, and I mean, there were lots of things. I mean, if I'd known what I know now, I could have short-circuited this process by 15 years.
Okay.
Because I've bumped my head. There've been a lot of areas where I've bumped my head and done things stupidly, and maybe the direction that I'd followed, I could have found that highway that I alluded to earlier on. I could have found that highway earlier. So
do you think it's important to find a mentor, or to...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what you're looking for, and kind of what I call it, sorry for all the bad language, but I call it dog fuck. You've got to find someone who's got dog fuck, who's got that common sense, who's going to be able to say, now this is how you sort this out, or that's how. Business is a simple thing. It's not, people kind of make it, they've got these gurus and all that. You can work it. The Portuguese and the Greeks used to do it on the back of a cigarette box. They ran their 7-Elevens with great success. And a lot of them came from Madeira. They were literate, they were enumerate, and they managed. But they were streetwise, and they checked things. And this is, what I see is there's so much academia in business. Business is not something that's academic. You've got to go out there and you've got to play that game, not worry about the theory.
Awesome. Thank you very much for spending some time.
Are there any questions on specific businesses?
Are there anybody?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole idea, is actually, if you've got a problem of your own and you're battling, that's...
Yeah.
I mean,
Does
that's
anybody have anything they want to say? Any questions? No? Okay, we go.
Yeah.
What do you think, how do you think South Africa, the retail market compares maybe to overseas companies like Europe and America?
Well, I mean, look, if I think, are you talking about the supermarket retail space?
Yeah, maybe the supermarket or just maybe manufacturing.
Well, I think I think one of the things is a lot more competition. Let's say take the UK. There's 7 or 8 big supermarket chains that are battling one another out. So, if you look, Woolworths is actually in a space completely on its own. I mean, Pick n Pay would like to be in that space, but they're not. So Woolworths actually have no competitors really in what they do. And then it's Pick and Pay and Checkers in their space, and in the slightly lower LSM, ShopRite own the space there. So what you've got is, when the retailers, I think, are a lot, the conditions are a lot easier as a supply, let's say in the UK or in Europe, than they would be here. That's the one element. I think things are a lot more efficient. So distances are shorter, so logistics are not such a big issue. Then what you've got is you've got staff who are qualified, who can, what always strikes me is when I go into a supermarket in Europe, you don't see any people unpacking. Like the stuff just kind of, somehow it happens. Whereas, here we've got all these different handling processes, and the stuff's getting stolen, and the boxes are getting thrown from a mezzanine level onto the ground, they're getting broken. No, that's what happens. And how it works, just to give you an idea, if you want to do business with Pick and Pay, so you get listed, well, we don't have to pay, but if you're and Checkers, it's the same with all of them. So if you're a Tiger Brands, you pay a listing fee. So let's say that was a Tiger Brands biscuit. They'd pay Pick and Pay R1 million to have it listed around the country, just to put it on the system. Then it would get supplied, and then they'd say, right, if you want this space, you pay for that space, or you pay for this gondola end. And maybe that wouldn't get broken easily, but let's say Tiger Brands do all gold tomato sauce, and a customer knocks the all gold tomato sauce off the shelf and it breaks. That goes in a dump bin at the back. And Tiger Brands must pay for it, not the supermarket. They pay for it. And then when the supermarket opens a store in Brackenfell, they then go to all the big manufacturers and they say, we need R500,000 worth of stock to help us with the opening of the store. So you've got to do that as well. So then the manufacturer's got to recover that money somewhere. So, you're always thinking, the guys, they've got a gun at their head all the time, and I don't think it's in Europe.
It's like that.
No, there's, look, make no mistake, the supermarkets have power, but they don't have the kind of power that they have here. And disrespect for manufacturers. Instead of working in partnership with the manufacturers, they're working against them. And the person who suffers at the end of the day is the consumer.
Because they pay more money.
Yeah.
So, okay, another question?
Yes.
Nowadays there's a lot of social media with blogs, Facebook. Like you said, Gumtree wasn't around when you were younger. What is your strongest marketing tool when you started?
I would say the marketing tool for us has been radio. I have like a 99 Rand phone, so we spoke about that scanning stuff. That was like anathema to me. So I don't even understand Twitter. I don't understand Facebook. I think we've got a Facebook page now, but I haven't really been on it. So our stuff's been radio. It's been kind of a bit more, maybe I'm sure I'm missing a trick, and hopefully with these direct shops we'll do it. So we've just done radio, and obviously the product, but then also product placement. So let's say, we do work on British Airways locally and internationally. So now what happens is a passenger flies on a plane, they get our biscuits, with a cup of tea or coffee on the plane or in the business lounge. They see the brand, there's brand awareness. Now they're in a supermarket, or the next thing at a Southern Sun Hotel or a Protea Hotel, or at the Western Grand, they see our biscuit again, and all of these things are reinforced. So you're seeing it, but that, luckily, our product's the kind of product that someone can put in their mouth and remember. Yeah. Cool.
Question over there.
Yes.
Would you consider being a mentor and giving the dog fuck?
I'm sure you haven't had anyone as crude as me. Yeah, I think I help people. I think that's the whole idea. It's just, you get a lot of pleasure out of helping people, but also what happens, and this is something quite interesting, is that sometimes there's an opportunity. There's always opportunity, and this is the thing. Opportunity is everywhere, and by helping someone and making the effort, it will sort of pay. I'm not saying you must do it because you're expecting a return. But it does come around, and often by helping someone out in something, you learn something new, because you're always learning. So I know that people often, not that I know all the answers, but certainly people often ask me for help or advice, and if I can help them or direct them to the right people, certainly I'll do so.
Okay, cool. There we go. You heard it from him right here on TV. Any other questions? Yes.
So my question is the last one.
Is the last one? Okay, cool.
It sounds a little bit rude, but
How do the South African labour attitude and productivity? If you could, would you rather make your product in Zimbabwe?
That's a good question. I must say, I've got great staff. It's taken a long time to do that, and in fact, apropos this article on CEO's remuneration that was in Business Day, someone wrote to me sort of bitching about productivity. And I think if your staff are not productive, it's a reflection on the management that staff aren't productive. And how I look at it is that, you know, if I look around this room here, everyone is pretty affluent. They've all had the benefit of a good background. They've had good schooling. They've had, you know, good environment in terms of folks giving them advice. So none of you have probably encountered mediocrity like the blue collar workers that say work for me have. You know, everything about their life has been mediocre. In fact, worse than mediocre. So then the thing is, well, what is their expectation? Their expectation of life, you know, there are no trees where they live. They're living in a Wendy house. They don't have hot water. They're having to use an urn and a plastic bucket to wash some of them. You know, I mean, this is what they are faced with. So it should be my challenge as an employer to try and this is a setting thing as well, is how do I convince them that they need to work in a manner that is productive and to kind of train people. So, I mean, I like to look at it, and is anyone linked to Vida Cafe here? No, okay, then I can badmouth them. But I mean, what a stupid business to have 7 or 8 people behind a counter. You can't pay 7 or 8 people properly and they're serving 10 cups of coffee. You know, if that was in Europe, there'd be 2 people doing it. So I'm just saying is, you know, by allowing 7 people to work behind the counter and the service is still slow, it's, you know, you're not actually training, you know, you're not giving those guys a chance, because those guys that are working at the VD, if you said, right, we're going to have an owner or the franchisor will be there and we're going to train them, those guys could eventually own their own Vidas one day if they learnt like the benefits of being productive, you know. So getting back to the question, I think everyone by nature is kind of takes it easy, and you know, you need to have your foot in people's throats at whatever level. You know, my customers, they have their foot on my throat, and it's a case of transferring that pressure down the line. But I don't think people must complain about their staff being unproductive. They must look at themselves first. And too many people, too many of the Lanis are unproductive, swanning around and sitting in the business lounge and doing whatever it is. I think, you know, we have a big role and responsibility to actually ensure that people do get productive and not just like kind of cop out with the Zimbabwe thing. And I think immigrants anywhere in the world will work harder. So a South African here who's had the benefit of good education will end up being a loafer in corporate life here, but if they go to the UK and they've got to
prove themselves and hustle.
No, then they pull their finger out. But over here it's pub lunches and whatever. Yeah.
Cool. Other question? Last one? One last question. Anybody who's watched Ferris Bueller? Okay. All good. Okay. Oh, here we go.
Yes.
This. Megan.
Distribution. I'm finding it really challenging.
What type of business are you in?
We do roof racks and bicycle holders for cars.
Okay.
So they're bigger items.
Okay.
And getting them around the country and you know, selling online as well, which I know you don't do, but
Now your product's perfect. What's the brand? Is it Tula or one of the? Okay. So you battling to get it around the country.
Yeah.
And who are you using at the moment?
Well, we're just using various courier companies.
Well, I mean, I tell you who I've used who've been very good. They do all our, because you know, obviously we ship business to business, all our stuff. So we're sending tens of thousands of cases a month. I mean, normally the minimum order might be 20 or 30 cases, but we use RTT. And you know, you have a relationship. You know, if you're trying different couriers, part of the problem then is that you don't have a relationship with a particular rep. So you know, our system, I know there's a track and trace system, and it's all scanned, and we know exactly, and the stuff never goes missing, and it arrives. So you maybe want to use a business like RTT, and if you want to make contact with me, maybe I can put you onto the rep who looks after us, because they're great. You know, it also took us a long time to find the right courier business. And what does your product sort of retail for?
1,000, 2,000 rand.
We see, then, I mean, and what does it weigh? A couple of Ks.
Yeah.
Well, then the nice thing is if you look at what the rand value of the product is, because you're always paying by kilogram or volumetric, and your product isn't, if it's a roof rack, it's long and narrow. Your transport fee, let's say to Joburg, might be like 100 rand, on a 2 grand item, which is nothing, and that's to the door. And it'll be there, within 2 days. You've got different services, but I would say RTT would be the right. Yeah.
Can I just ask something in terms of how high your volumes in terms of what you're selling? Your volumes are just
Quantities?
yeah.
Well,
It's
it's not, at the moment, it's not going to warehouses. It's going straight from the factory, so it'd be like an order per store, going one store.
I'll reverse the question, so it might make more sense. We're from Shopstar, and we're looking at logistics for a lot of our small clients, and the biggest problem that we find is that you're dealing with the wrong people in terms of you're dealing with an agent that is selling the logistics service but not providing a solution.
Yeah.
Similar to what you're saying. So what we're trying to find is, and that's why I'm asking you what your volumes are. Typically in this country, if the volumes are low, the clients of logistics companies are not that interested in terms of growing with that business, and they're rather looking at larger companies.
Well, I think we started. Obviously our shipping business now is, because everything is sent all over the country and into, Botswana and Namibia, and I mean it's big tonnages. But we started small, and I must say RTT have been, look, it's a massive setup. It's right, it's their main sort of depot is right next to OR Tambo, or just in Jones Jet Park, and I think that they'd be, that's once again that's the setting thing. You got to sell that rep or that manager to say this is what we're going to do. Come on, in other words, that becomes a challenge. Yeah. But if you go to an intermediate, you're not dealing with RTT, and there are these shipping brokers. You've got to get to the source and say, listen, I'll give you some Mantelli's biscuits if you bloody do our, if you handle our accounts, and let's try it out. Can we try for 6 months? So RTT would be, but you can drop me an email and I'll direct you to the right person.
And yeah, we've got some more time. I don't know if anybody has another question. Good. Okay. Right. Twitter competition. Yeah. Are you ready? Okay. So Paul's from Was Satisfied. He does the whole social media. Tell us about yourself. Tell us of your Twitter competition.
Alright guys, so on about a monthly basis, we obviously encourage the guys to tweet as much as possible, and I just want to highlight tonight, the guys have an absolutely amazing feed. We've been training for the past half an hour on Mantelli grinds. So freaking great work.
Well done, guys.
Simon, brilliant talk, thank you very much.
Thank you.
However, I've been sitting there racking myself with guilt. I had an Oreo with my tea this afternoon. It's been good, but it's been a tale of Paul quotes tonight. You said so many great things. I wouldn't trust the government. Why would you? They're in government wearing red overalls. You know what I mean? So that's quite clear. But a standout person for us, and she almost didn't make it tonight, Stephanie Brummer, and she stuck to her guns and tweeted like an absolute machine. Thank you very much for that. You killed it. And I think it's a message that I relate to, certainly with my business, and I think for all you guys as well. Is the pull quote was, path leads to a road and the road leads to a highway. Where you start isn't always where you're going to end up. So whether that's a success or a fail, the message there is just keep going and keep strong, and lean on your peers for advice. Never be shy to ask.
So is that the winner?
That is the winner.
Awesome. So you are the lucky winner of, where's the, okay, the prize is coming. Right, so you get the t-shirts, some biscuits, a book, and a fish. And a fish. Simple red fish. There we go. Well done. Last thing I've got to pull in. There is the ball. I see the back there. So while the ball comes walking forward, just put your cards in, because we're going to be doing a draw now for some more prizes. 2 draws actually. Everybody know? Yeah. Any more business cards? Last minute. Anyone? There you go, watch the back there. Let's pass it forward. Okay, there you go, some radio checking in. Oh, the sponsor, we're actually doing this one. Okay, so you may draw us a business card winner out of all of that.
Okay. Alice Mantelli's. Ambrosia Luxury Travels.
There you go. Who's the person? Ambrosia.
Yeah.
Is that you?
Yeah.
There we go. Well done. Very good. It's a his and hers t-shirt tag. My Google entrepreneur. There we go. Awesome. And then you can draw another card.
Okay.
There we go. See, shop start chucking the card again.
Hussein Patel.
They say, oh, there we go. Ask a question.
Jeez, all the same space.
There we go. See, it helps to pay attention. Right, there we go. Awesome. Okay. Just some to wrap up a few things. As of next month, we are going to be moving to a very slightly bigger venue. This is a 60-seater, and you're going to be moving to a 70-seater. And it's at the Rockwell Hotel. So there's parking underneath the Rockwell Hotel. It's in Strand Street. It's right behind Beefcakes, ladies, right? So it's right behind there. There's secure parking underground. You pay 10 rand a flat rate for the whole evening. You climb in the lift, takes you straight to the venue. It's as simple as that. So it's really nice. It can take 70 people, and we're going to have, I'm hoping Fax Trio will be playing there for us. Thank you, Sean. The other thing I need to know, talking about is WordCamp, Cape Town. The tickets are on sale in August. Okay. And the event will be taking place on the 23rd of October in the Cape Town Stadium. It's massive. If you want anything to know anything and to do anything with WordPress, if you're doing WooCommerce, WooThemes, whatever, that is the place that you need to be. Because you'll meet the people, you'll hear the stories. If you're a theme developer, etc., or if you're just selling stuff online. Okay. The tickets open in August. There's going to be 8 workshops. And if you want to be a talker or a sponsorer or a volunteer, please talk to Matt. There's the Do Action, which is a charity that the WordPress is offering. It's really awesome. I'm going to take part of it. It's a charity hackathon. It's on the 23rd of August at the Bandwidth Barn. And we are going to be creating brand new websites for 9 charities. So that's really cool. So if you want to get involved with it, guys, it's seriously awesome. It's on Twitter and everything. If you want to get involved, we are still looking for 14, am I right? I can't see what it is, but there's 14 people, still there's 14 people, and they're looking for developers, designers, project managers, social media, person to hand around the coffee and the tea can also work. So I think that's quite a great initiative. Okay, that's the Do Action WordPress Hackathon. The information is on wpcapetown.co.za, WordPress Cape Town. Okay. Other than that is the prize for our speaker. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. That's it. Please do join us for drinks at Rick's Cafe across the road. And there might be some food left over. And thank you. These things, if you don't mind, please put them in the little bowl downstairs and on the way out. I really appreciate it, because you only come next time, you don't have to put it in. Great, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.